They went after Mann Act, which is basically transporting females across state lines for allegedly illicit purposes. And that's what they went after him with. And it was a 15-page indictment that was rife with all sorts of descriptions, lurid descriptions. And usually in the federal system, you would have gotten 2 pages of indictment, not 15. So there was a grandstand show which was using the access to a friendly media environment to engage in propaganda efforts and activities. So I'd pass the mic. That's just a brush up view on it.
All right, sway me.
Good evening, Dana, Judge
Hi.
Joe Brown. How are you? Judge, I was there at the White House and I missed you. I didn't see you there, but it was so crowded and so many people. I was just excited to be there at the White House that my freedmen ancestors built, and then the greeting and all the people. It was very, very nice. And I agree with you. I have some questions though. I heard some people are upset because they felt like there was a lot of symbolism. I wanted to ask you, what did you think about that, and if you felt that it was a great deal of symbolism, as well as I'll get to the next question after that. What do you think? Do you feel and think that that was a great deal of symbolism at the event?
It depends on what you're calling symbolism. See, in terms of the symbolic methodologies of making a nation, that's why we have these statues. You know, the heroic equestrian statue, where if you're in Firenze, meaning Florence, you see all of these great knights from 500-600 years ago with a sword held high in the air, mounted in battle armor on a war horse, or you see a Civil War leader mounted on a horse. It's symbology. It's sort of saying these are great guys. Look, we want you to emulate them. Look, we're making them heroes. We're making subject to statuary. So there's nothing wrong with those images. And if you were there at the White House, you remember when he made the remarks about some of the statues he was going to put around the White House: Frederick Douglass, Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, which is like, wow, you know, you'd very seldom get anybody in American politics or holding an American office talking about they're going to put statues of those guys up. But yeah, you had the imagery. That's just going with the trappings of government. You see the Brits, you know, the Queen or now the King, who does actually nothing when it comes to governing the country. They do all the pomp and circumstance when they ride in the 150-year-old gilded carriages drawn by all of the white horses with the mounted hussars or dragoons or escorting the carriages or the carriage to wherever they're going to a formal parade. It's about circumstance. But anyway,
Yeah, I agree. I love the fact that he was recognizing our ancestors that literally did stand up for this nation in many multiple ways, and that were true patriots of America, right? So, with that though, I noticed that he self-corrected. He did start saying African American, and within the speech, he self-corrected and began saying Black Americans. And a great deal of people, we're offended by the African American. We don't like that term since it was just put up on us, right?
I didn't get put up on us. How that developed in my lifetime is by the time I got out of high school, Negro was kind of, wow, why are we trying to, tiptoe around this thing? And then about 1966, 65, late 65, early 66, black got in. There was a lot of a resistance to doing that. Then about 67, 68, it became Afro-American. and then it went back to being black, and then somewhere in the early mid 70s, it started drifting from black back to Afro American for a few months, it just seemed like, and then it went African American. And it stayed that way until about 5 or 6 years ago. Some of us on Twitter and other social media platforms, I know I did. I just got sick of listening to this little tiptoeing around the obvious, and I started using black, and some other people did too. And now it's black. So it's sort of like, how do you think of yourself? And there are people that get offended by the use of the term black. So they are amongst us. And using African American was a sop to that. And then you have this thing with the federal forms. It goes the first block: are you Hispanic, non Hispanic? If you check non Hispanic, then you go to the next set of questions. And if you are Hispanic, you skip them and they don't even want to know. They just consider you this mass ethnic group of Hispanics. But if you aren't, then you get asked, are you white or Caucasian? Are you black or African American? And then it goes on to other categories. So I think what he was doing was taking what's on the government forms, black/African American. So I don't hold that against him.
Oh yeah, I don't hold it against him. I love that he self-corrected from African American to Black American, because I remember Jesse Jackson putting that African American out there, and
And
yeah.
Jesse didn't get it. He didn't create it. It was
Okay.
out there.
Well, and then what do you think about him making Alice Johnson the pardon czar?
Bad mistake. Bad mistake.
Okay.
He gave a recitation about her that he got from Know Nothing on the Subject, Ken Kardashian. She heard a radio broadcast from somebody that was unalterably opposed to prison sentences for drug dealing. I had at least 6 first-degree murder cases in my courtroom where she took the hits out. She kept her mouth shut, refused to make a statement, and in American law, you cannot convict anybody on the uncorroborated statements of an accomplice, which is somebody going along with the crime. Allegedly, what was going on is she took the hits out. When she got finally busted, she wasn't a grandmother. She was in her early mid 30s. And it was one of the third or fourth largest busts in DEA history. They got her for $87 million in cash she had in her immediate possession. And the street equivalent of 19,000 pounds, that's 9.5 tons of coke. And she is responsible for the crackheads and crack babies from Florida all the way up to Chicago in the United States in the late 80s and early 90s. She was working with there was a war going on between the Colombian and the Mexican cartels, and she was with one side and she had opposition with another, and there was some horrible contract murders going on at the time. So I don't agree with it.
Okay.
Right now, a lot of her lieutenants that worked for her are still finishing up long and lengthy federal sentences. So I don't agree with that.
Okay.
But
And
he did. Everybody's not perfect.
mm, well, I knew she was from Memphis, so I didn't know if you knew her case or
Oh,
not.
I'm aware of who she is. Like I said, I
Hmm.
sat through 6 horrible murder cases, uh, first-degree murder cases that took place in my courtroom, and she was the person that allegedly took the contracts or the hits out. So yeah,
Okay, then my last question. I know I saw what you made a comment, a post about the advisors, some of the advisors to Trump, and how you.
yes.
What are your thoughts?
What I'm saying about that is
Hmm.
there are a number of people that got pointed out, I imagine, to Mr. Trump And these were people that were supposed to be able to make it happen within the black or the minority communities. They aren't all black, but they are essentially gatekeepers. And what I saw and have seen is that they're very jealous of their situation. So they block people that could really help the Trump administration and the people of the country because they look at them as rivals for power. If you've ever encountered on a job this type of boss that tries to tear down all of the people he supervises because he's afraid or she's afraid that if that doesn't happen, those people will outshine the boss and become the bosses. That's not how it works. The boss is supposed to make everybody look good, better than him, because that's his job. And you have fools who don't realize that. So you have their counterparts who sit in the position of being advisors or gatekeepers, and they keep the gate shut against a lot of people that could really help the situation out. And that's what I was talking about.
Oh, okay. I can see that too. I totally understand what you're speaking of. Maybe we should have a conversation offline. But the last thing is, what are your thoughts about him acknowledging that immigration has hurt Black Americans the most?
Well, it's obvious. I mean, it's like it hurts everybody. You have a situation right now where crime in the streets is rampant in the United States of America. Our cities are horribly dangerous. Memphis is supposed to be the 10th most dangerous city in the world and the most dangerous in America. I live here and I know how bad it's gotten. So it does not do anybody any good when you do things that impact the public safety. And when you set up a situation where governors, senators, congressmen, mayors, sheriffs, and chiefs of police encouraging the rampant, flagrant breaking of the law, that does absolutely nothing to set up an atmosphere of law and order that is necessary to make cities a safe, prosperous, and enjoyable place to live.
All right. I see you in queue, the Negro, you feel me, and Bartonella. I have to bring you up when someone drops down. So if anybody is finished speaking, just drop down so I could bring up new speakers. I am going to swing back to Dr. Mark and Peter, but I want to go to Bobby and El Hotep and Jared. Go ahead, Bobby. Is Bobby still here? No. Okay. El Hotep.
Hey, how's it going?
Are you at
I
work?
don't know what the yeah, right now. Oh, yeah, you know it's
Because of the reception. We can't hear
yeah.
you.
What about right now?
Yeah, go ahead. You're good.
Okay. I don't know what the previous speaker's name is, but I did want to fire up on one of her subjects that she was talking about. I wanted to ask the judge about what policies were discussed at the White House event, if there were any policies off camera that were discussed. Just because I heard that there were some policies that might have been discussed, but it was hunched up.
He went at some length. I
And
mean,
I want,
it wasn't a short thing. My recollection was that he spoke for about 45 minutes, if not more than that. And he covered a lot of things in terms of concrete policy. So, yeah, there were policies spoken about. It had to do with economic development. It had to do with probably one of the most important things going with turning situations around on the streets was making sure that the youth get the opportunity to become educated so they have other options besides crime. uh, to promotion of job developments, to dealing with the fact that technology is evolving. There's an opportunity for the people represented by those assembled for the event had a connection with, there was an opportunity for them to get in on the ground floor of these things. So there was a discussion of prison reform. I recall there's a discussion of getting our dollars spent wisely so that it actually helps somebody out rather than furthering an agenda that breaks down institutions like the black family that need to be promoted rather than destroyed. A lot of stuff like that.
Reason why I asked is because, I mean, considering we're like 14% of the population, 45% homeless. I understand that, yeah, that is all good and all that, but we need concrete policy. You get what I'm saying? We actually need some bills passed. The reason why I bring that up is because, like,
Wait a minute, hold on. Why do we need this when if you have a free landscape where nobody's holding you back, you can do it yourself? So you've got the Black Caucus, which is supposed to represent the interest of black people. And they could pass the laws. The president can't introduce a bill to fund something. That has to come out of Congress, which has two chambers, the House and the Senate. Why is that not coming out of that? The president has no money to spend or allocate that doesn't come from
I'm gonna have
Congress.
to use the electric jet.
So here's the thing. It's, in other words, what he was promising was everybody would have the same opportunity as anybody else. And he talked about, matter of fact, he specifically discussed the trap of feeling that you're entitled to something and becoming dependent upon it rather than learning how to do it for yourself. And I agree with that 100%. When I was on the bench or when I was practicing law or when I did that arbitration thing on TV for 15 years, over and over and over again, the problem with at least one part of the litigant set was that they felt they were owed something. And they didn't deal with contract law. They didn't deal with decency, equity, or just plain morality when it came to, you just can't do this. People earn this stuff. You just can't come in because you think you're entitled to having your desire satisfied and take it. There's either a cost to be paid or something to be done to earn it. So I applaud that. That's a trap that the Democratic Party has gotten us in for the last few decades. In other words, it boils itself down to the parable. You can feed a man a fish, or you can teach him to fish so he can feed himself. And the former, that is, we want to give these guys the fish over and over again so they become dependent upon us and support us, is a poison that we can no longer afford to take. Now, I'll pass the mic on that.
All right.
Well, I agree
Oh, go
with that.
ahead.
I'm just saying because if you look at use examples like look at it, anti-Asian hate. Those are specific bills.
Wait. Oh,
And,
hold
We can't hear you, Hotel.
Yeah.
We can't hear you.
can you hear me now?
Yeah, better.
Okay. When you look at specific bills like the
Can't hear
anti-Asian,
you now.
It's like your mic is muffled. You need to speak directly into the mic.
it's probably these walls. What about now?
Okay, you're going loud and clear.
Okay. I think when you look at specific bills like the anti-Asian hate bills, and other specific bills that other ethnic and other groups get, when you look at the speech and the content of the speech, I think that's why some people kind of get some pushback with okay, we just got some statues, we just got athletes, and I think that's kind of the reason why the woman who was speaking kind of before me was stating with the symbolism, because I heard that too, that, okay, you're just going to get Muhammad Ali, Kobe Bryant, you're just going to get athletes. And you're not going to get anything other than that. So that was the reason why I asked that question. I'm not expecting anything from the Congressional Black Caucus because a lot of them are
Frederick
sellouts.
Douglass. Frederick Douglass, Malcolm X. Those are not athletes, or they may have been, I don't know, but that's far more important. The other thing is the other athletes were doing something else. Kobe Bryant's a sop. If Kobe Bryant never existed, the condition of black folk would not change. Frederick Douglass, if he didn't exist, there'd be a hell of a difference in the circumstances we find ourselves in today. Same thing with Malcolm X. So that's just part of the thing of politics. But, it is what it is.
All right. I need to get to Jared, and then I'm gonna swing to Dr. Mark and Peter, and then I'm gonna get to You Feel Me, the Negro, Bratnella, and Love for Toy. So go ahead, Jared. Hi.
Thank you, Dana. I appreciate you having me up, allowing me to speak.
All right. Peter.
Yeah.
Um, I was interested in what you said earlier about the woman who was the, well, I guess, pardon czar now, and her her escapades in which she was involved in regards to cocaine dealing and murders that were ordered by her. Um, I'm a big proponent of legalizing and decriminalizing all narcotics. And very simply, it's because it would improve the safety factor so that you could walk into, say, a CVS or another store or like a liquor store, and you could buy your drug of choice and you could know that it's not going to be poisoned or cut with an adulterant that's going to potentially give you brain damage or kill you. I think that, as a country that's built upon the rights of the individual, we should reject paternalism or the father knows best attitude that the government should be intruding on affairs that are personal in nature. And I'd like to get your opinion on that as someone who's sat on the bench and has, overseen a lot of these cases in regards to the war on drugs. Where do you stand on that? You might be
You're
muted again.
muted, Judge. There you go.
Okay. Some drugs are like alcohol. When not abused, they can be interesting. Other drugs you don't need. Have you seen the zombies, by the way?
Yeah, the Zan or whatever it's called,
No,
Zank.
zombies,
I don't know.
zombies in Philadelphia, Baltimore, other places. There a bunch of them standing on the sidewalk or in the middle of the street, and they're drooped over like they're trying to touch their toes. And there's a big pool of drool at their feet. And they've been like that for a half hour and not moved, and they haven't fallen over, and nobody's moving them. That's fentanyl. Fentanyl is interesting. I had a problem with cancer one time. I seem to have beaten it, but I remember a 30-day supply of fentanyl had a copay of $1.62 for a 30-day supply. It was a small patch about the size of your baby fingernail. You stuck it like a band-aid to your shoulder, and for 72 hours you didn't feel any pain. You also didn't feel like you were in your right mind, and it was not a good high. It was just like, what in the hell is going on here? This is not cool. I'm not in control. I don't feel like moving. And I made it a point not to take this stuff unless the problems got unbearable. Due to the radiation therapy, I had third-degree burns on the outside of my neck and inside my throat. That wasn't pleasant. But fentanyl would make it so you couldn't feel it, but you weren't about anything else. It was just like you were dead, but you were observing because you were still slightly conscious, but you didn't want to move. So that kind of thing, when it's out there, becomes problematical. You don't want that kind of thing to spread. Now, granted, if you go to Mexico, the pharmacies down there, you don't require a prescription to buy this stuff. You just give the doctor's note or you give your own note to the pharmacist and they'll fill it with some Schedule 1 drugs that you can't buy without a prescription in the United States. That may or may not be good when you have people who have the common sense to say, I don't really need to do this, but we don't have a lot of common sense in this country. And we also have a government and a population that does get some charitable leanings every now and then and says, we don't want any zombies standing in the middle of the street in Philadelphia or Baltimore, wherever it may be, blocking traffic and looking like, whoa, what's wrong? Why aren't they falling over?
That's the dope head lean, as they call it,
It's
right in
like
Philly.
it's
I've
like
been over there
Kensington.
in
It's like
Yep,
Kensington.
Kensington.
Yeah, it's
Yep,
bad.
I used to have family down there. And Judge, I had a family member. He's since passed on about 10 years ago. He had thyroid cancer, I think, or cancer, and he had fentanyl lollipops as well as the patches that you talked about. And he said the same thing. He only used them when he really, really needed them. And I am sympathetic to your point about the zombies and people not having common sense in the country, but at the same time, they're doing it regardless anyway. And if all this stuff was legal tomorrow, you and I would venture to say a lot of people in this space right now wouldn't go and buy fentanyl and use it. So I think you'd have more targeted outreach to people who do need help to get off of it. And
I'm not saying it's not. It wouldn't be a better thing maybe if there was some rationalization of what's going on with the drugs. But it's like, okay, it's an assessment thing. It's like anything else. It's got its downside and it's got its positive side. It's a choice we as a public have to make. But right now, it's very productive, a very high income for certain people, and it has some very dangerous side effects that are what they are. So crates of guns come in with the kilos of the drugs. And we can't stop the war on drugs, and we certainly can't stop the crates of illicit firearms that come in with them. So we've got smuggling, and the smuggling is big business. And right now, we've got a problem that's going to probably make us move on what you're talking about very quickly because our borders have been open and the cartels that have been running these drugs in through smuggling now have numerous representatives in this country who didn't have to sneak in. They just walked in and were probably given a ride to wherever they wanted to go, courtesy of the government.
Mm-hmm.
And Judge, if you legalize that, now you've taken away the ability or the incentive for them to make money because it's now ubiquitous. And so you actually eliminate the drug cartels, but in the same token, you're eliminating a lot of the funding sources for the black ops for the CIA. But I mean, at the end of the day, the
Sure.
people shouldn't be going to prison for possessing and distributing plant-based derivatives. And I just think it's absurd. It's destroyed a whole generation of people when I'm sympathetic to people who want to party on the weekend. If you want to go out and you wanted to take a blast of cocaine or a toot after you had a couple of drinks, I don't see what the problem is, and I don't think the government should be in the business of intruding into what you want to do on your personal time, as long as you're not harming anybody else.
Well, how about this one? You know where the harm comes in? A crack baby 20 years after it's born.
That's
Yeah,
The
you're right.
mothers weren't.
You're right,
The
but you
mothers
could
weren't
also argue the
Because
treated
they
same
could
for
be
fairly.
fetal
addicted.
alcohol,
Because they could be
fetal
addicted to
Yeah,
it.
alcohol
well, I'll give
syndrome.
them that, but the point is some things are very dangerous, and even if you legalize crack cocaine, there are people that would use it, and we did have a period where we still do have a thing, but they don't talk about it much now. You've got crack babies born, and you can tell them, certain areas, families have outcasts or outliers in their family circle who have done this and they have problems with the crack babies, and they don't necessarily call them that now, but the crack babies do what happens with any other baby. They become adults, at least in physical stature and age, and they have problems.
Yeah.
So what do we do about those crack babies? And see, the woman that
Yeah.
I was talking about, you might say that she was the enabler for all of the crack babies born in the southeast United States from Florida up to Chicago at one point. And has anybody dealt with a crackhead, even if the drugs were legal? What about the crackheads? See, what are you going to do with them? That's not quite the same as an alcoholic.
I hear what you're saying, Judge. I
So
mean,
it's like if you legalize the drugs, we'll have probably triple the amount of addicts, as opposed illegal drugs. You're still going to have addicts, but maybe not as much
Yeah.
if the drugs were legal. But
well,
the
there's
crime
a.
would be
Go
down.
ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, but if it's but drugs illegal, crime would be down, but addicts would be up. It's like a no-win situation.
Well, Dana, that is possible. I tend to think that it wouldn't be as much though at three
Mhm.
times the rate because you take away the forbidden fruit aspect, right? People want to do things when you tell them you can't do it, right? You see about what happened with legalization of marijuana. A lot of people don't use it anymore or have curtailed their usage of it that were, oh, I want to experiment, see how it is. But it became so powerful that they've actually stepped down to using something that's not as THC laden and have a psychotropic effect. It's actually used for pain reduction,
Peter,
like with
there's a huge
the
physical addictive aspect to some of the stuff that we're discussing also, which is different than what you're saying though. If it's not as
yeah, I
cocaine could
understand that,
fall in
but
that category though.
if you look at harm reduction, if you really want to do harm reduction, right, you would take out KFC, McDonald's, and all the other fried food places
It's
that are
true.
contributing to the biggest killer, which is heart disease in the
Yeah.
country. So if you have a right as an individual to choose your life path, then the government should not be intruding on how you choose to live that life path, so long as you're not asking somebody else to pay for your dalliances and you're not intruding on another individual's liberty.
I
I'm
don't disagree with you.
philosophically against it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't disagree with you. That's a good discussion. You know what? Maybe we could follow that discussion up on Thursday or Friday space, because that's a good discussion, and I really don't disagree. But I definitely see what the judge is saying, especially when you talk about the crack babies. But yeah, are we better off with legalized drugs? And real quick, I'm gonna go to you feel me, the Negro, Bratnella, Love for Toy, and Almas.
Let me
Dana,
let me
I'd
throw
love to
one other
invite
thing
Dr.
out there.
Carl
How you
Hart
doing?
into it.
Wait,
Let
one
me throw
second, you
one
feel me?
little
1 second.
let me throw one little brief thing out there. One of the problems that you have with illicit drugs is how does the addict get the drugs? All right, do they go hold up people and say, "Stick them up, I need your money," or go stab somebody? Stick them up, I need your money, or go stab somebody to get the money to get their drugs, which they might get more easily if they were legalized, or if we legalize them, how do they support themselves? Are they going to stop committing the violent crime uh, because they can get the drugs and don't have to steal to get the drugs? Or are they going to still steal because they need to support themselves, even though they can get their drug of choice and become addicts without, recourse?